If I have the money saved up, ready to go, even if it's more than I would have liked, let's say it's going to be like 5,000. I don't really want it to be all of that, but I've done it ahead of time. This psychological, emotional thing, I've already processed it before I actually went on the trip so that the trip becomes enjoyable.
I think we're going to go through that regardless of whether we plan. And at the same time, to your point, if you plan, you're going to go through it ahead of time and then you can just enjoy your trip.
Welcome to the Christ Centered Stewardship podcast with your hosts, Maria Casillas and Nino Villa. Christ Centered Stewardship is a ministry of new money habits designed to equip believers to steward everything God has given them, including their time, talent, and treasure in ways that bring Him honor, glory, and praise. You can join our growing community on Facebook and submit your questions to podcast at newmoneyhabits.com. Now, to begin today's episode, here is Maria Casillas and Nino Villa.
Maria, it's that time of year. Travel is upon us. It's summer, and so it's a perfect time to escape. For us here in Arizona, it's a perfect time to get out of the heat and go somewhere that's a little bit cooler. And so today, let's talk about how to steward travel plans well and how to make sure that we don't come home to a big pile of debt that we got to deal with for the next 3 to 6 months or longer because of a lack of planning.
All right.
So recently I had a friend reach out and was even asking questions about travel. And it's not intended for leisure, but it is going to be a fun trip. They are taking their oldest off to college, but they're local, so they're here in Arizona, and they'll be making a trip out to Pennsylvania. And part of that is logistics and just the process of taking child to college. But another part of that is, hey, while we're there, let's enjoy the fact that we're somewhere else. And, you go to somewhere like Pennsylvania in the Philadelphia area, you're talking also just rich with history and whatnot. And how often are you going to get there? So the idea is, how do we plan that travel well?
Okay, I like it. So I can tell you we're in the throes of traveling as well. It's funny that you bring this up today. My husband literally left this morning to travel to Florida, and it's not for our fun. And obviously I don't get to go with, but he does have to once in a while travel for work. And so that is where he's headed today. And I bring that up because it's one of the ways that we use those quote unquote gifts that have been given to us. I don't love that he has to travel, and I don't love that we have to put their travel onto our cards because I know that can certainly be a little bit of a risk, but so far so good. And so I'm glad about that. But what we've been able to do, Nino, is utilize some of those travel points for our own benefit. And so that's one of the things that I'm excited about when he leaves on trips like this, that I know we're going to be able to use some of those points for upcoming travel that we're looking at for this summer.
I think it's important too that we identify, sometimes travel is planned and then sometimes travel is not planned. And so to your point, even though your husband's traveling and it is going to contribute to future travel, it doesn't necessarily mean you have that travel already planned out. And so we're going to kind of tackle both elements today. We're going to talk about, hey, when you know where you're going and when, how can you do that well? But let's also think about how can we prepare for travel even when we don't know where or when.
Yeah.
And so as I had this conversation with my friend recently, for me, it is when I know where I'm going and when I'm going there, or I'm sitting down with a client and we're planning their travel and they know when and where, that's how the conversation gets started. It is, where are you going? When are you traveling? Because those are going to be key to some calculations that we're going to make in just a few moments. But we start with when and where. Then we have to talk about 5 different categories. One is how are you getting from A to B? So for my friend, it was, how are you getting from Arizona to Pennsylvania? Are you driving? Is this like a rent a U-Haul because you're moving things? Or are you packing light, just taking what you absolutely need? And are you flying? So you have to consider travel from A to B. How are you getting there? And what are the costs associated with that? So that's kind of where the conversation begins. And when it's a longer distance like that, the next thing is lodging. So what does lodging look like? If they had been driving, there'd be lodging along the way, but they are flying. So once you get there, where are you staying and what is that going to cost you? And so those are 2 of the 5 categories, but those are pretty obvious.
Well, I actually appreciate that you brought that up, because one of the trips that we are planning this summer is back to Illinois. That is where I come from. And as much as it pains me sometimes to use our travel fund specifically to go there, this time it is for a wedding. And so we will get to see a lot more family than typical. Having said that, we're still in the throes of deciding, are we going to drive or will we fly? And in this case, it's not because of, do we have stuff that we need to bring because it's a college move, but instead it's, what is the cost of either one of those? And so it's been a lot of back and forth. What are we willing to spend? How do we want to spend our time? So it's not just a money spend, right? It's a time spend as well. And so we've had to really just kind of work through some of that. And it's funny that you mentioned the idea of not knowing where you're going. But in this case, I mentioned the Florida trip today because it is one of the things that my husband specifically said. He said, let me get back from this Florida trip and see how many more points I accrued from that, because that's going to be one of the determining factors as to whether or not we have enough points to fly all of us 6 versus having to pay for that and or gas to drive. So it is interesting once you have that identity of this is where we want to go, or even just a sense of that, then you can start to not just put the money aside, but to actually make certain plans based accordingly.
I remember a trip that the family and I took in 2017 where we decided that we were going to drive to Buffalo, New York from Phoenix, Arizona. And for a lot of the same reasons, right? Cost was a big part of it, but then it was, hey, since there are going to be some costs anyway, why not make an adventure out of it? Right?
Yep.
So you get to kind of pivot.
Yep.
And so how do you get from A to B is the first thing, and then lodging obviously being the second. The third category I was sharing with my friend, and I share with clients all the time, is once you get to location B, how are you getting around? So in 2017, when the family and I drove across country, well, when we were in New York, we already had the rental car, so we knew we were getting around by rental car, gas. And one of the things that I had to remind myself about back east is tolls. We don't deal with tolls out here in Arizona, so I have to prepare for that. So getting around when I'm at location B, and so as I was sharing with a friend, since they're flying, it's when you get there, is it just going to be rideshare? Are you going to take an Uber? Or are you going to rent a car so that you have flexibility and freedom? And so what are the costs associated with getting around once you get to location B?
Smart.
And then the next 2, I think a lot of people would budget these 2 things together. They would merge these 2 categories, and I would really encourage you to keep them separate. The first one is food. You have to feed yourself and the family while you're traveling. And so what is that going to look like? And this goes back to knowing when you're going and when you're traveling is part of calculations. So I said a moment ago, you need to know when you're leaving and when you're coming back, because it's going to influence the food calculation, or at least it should. I like to have our clients break down their travel days. What day are you traveling out? What day are you traveling back? And all the days in between. So that when they're looking at a category like food, they can say, how much do we want to spend on food per day multiplied by number of days? I just did this with one of our clients who is traveling to Hawaii. And she learned that based on the numbers that she was giving me, And the 8 days that she's going to be in Hawaii, we were looking at like a $600 food budget. And I know on the surface at first, that sounds insane. $600 for a
Not
week?
for Hawaii.
Well, exactly right. Because what ends up happening is you're eating out much more often. Now she's going to be staying with a friend, so there's an opportunity to go to the grocery store, grab some food, so that like at least breakfast, right? Like I have food at the house for breakfast. I don't have to eat out. But I'll tell you what, food on trips is grossly underestimated. People think they hear a week and they're like, I just need like $100 or $200 for food. And I'm telling you right now, you are going to blow through that budget more often than not.
Can I tell you a quick story?
Of course.
I used to be part of a direct sales company in which you could earn trips, and I earned about 7 through them. One of them was to Hawaii. And I was also part of this group with a friend of mine who was very much into timeshares. And while I am not into timeshares, I absolutely benefited from being friends with somebody who was, because every time we would earn a trip, she would go and find one of her timeshares in that area. And then she would help extend that trip and invite my husband and I with her. So it was just kind of a fun couples thing that we got to do. Well, this time that we went to Hawaii, we are always very budget conscious, both us and our friends. And we thought, well, we're just going to go and we're going to grab some, groceries, just like you mentioned, and we're going to put them in the fridge and we're just going to have breakfast at our own, I guess you could call it hotel. Oh my gosh, they left, they came back and they spent $100. You use the number 100. They spent $100 on a gallon of milk. I think it was one loaf of bread and then some deli meat. and that was it. Like, it was crazy. We're like, wow. And we thought, well, if you go out, you're going to spend that anyway. Hawaii was so expensive because they have to actually bring the food in by a boat. And so it was pretty crazy. And so, yeah, $100 would have gotten us one breakfast. Yeah. For the 4 of us.
As I was having the conversation with our client, it was important to just be real. Like, look, Hawaii is expensive. Mm-hmm. This is what we're going to end up spending. And I'd rather help a client prepare for a large number that they don't spend. Amen. Rather than allow them to think, hey, I'm going to get away with doing this for like $200. They end up spending $400, $500, $600, completely annihilating the budget. I'd much rather she prepare for $600 and end up spending $450 and coming home with a W, with a win. Like, hey, I didn't spend as much as I thought.
Yep. Especially if she's the type of person who will have that just go in her mind over and over and over, because it will ruin her vacation. And yes. I say that as somebody who is like that. And so having an overabundance will definitely help her not to be super fixated on that during her trip.
I started the episode off by talking about not coming home to a pile of debt too, right? So whether you're planning and doing a better job planning so that you don't come home to a pile of debt because you actually had the money before you went on the trip, or to the point that you just made, the other part of that is even when you plan, if you don't plan enough and you spend more, even if you had the money and you spent more, you're going to feel defeated and you're not going to have enjoyed your trip as much as, I don't know, you could probably talk to this part a little bit better than I can. But for me, if I have the money saved up, ready to go, even if it's more than I would have had liked, right? Let's say I do all the numbers and it's going to be like $5,000, and I'm like, oh, I don't really want it to be all of that, but I've done it ahead of time. Mm-hmm. This psychological, emotional thing, I've already processed it before I actually went on the trip, so that the trip becomes enjoyable. I don't know if I'm making any sense or if you're picking up on what I'm putting down.
No, I do. I think you're making sense. I probably have that look on my face because I think we're going to go through that regardless of whether we plan. And at the same time, to your point, if you plan, you're going to go through it ahead of time and then you can just enjoy your trip. I think that not danger, that's kind of a strong word, but the risk that we run is we get that shell shock, that idea of, oh my gosh, this is a lot of money, and we don't plan enough. So then you go through it again. And so I do think that you have to be careful, because just because $5,000 sounds like a lot of money, for example, it is, if it's really going to be $6,000, then you're going to have to run through that twice. Right. And so to your point, it really just is important to almost overestimate ahead of time and then over plan. And worst case scenario, you come home and you've got $1,000 surplus that you get to put either into your next travel fund, or you get to spread it out according to some of your other priorities that you've already set aside.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, there's this fifth category, and as I said, I think sometimes this kind of gets bundled in with food, but I really would encourage people to keep it separate, and that is entertainment. And as I said that word to my friend on Friday, he just kind of paused. He was like, I would never, you're absolutely right. Because I said, you're dropping your oldest off at college, you're probably going to want to at least pick up a t-shirt or a sweatshirt. You're going to be in a historical place like Philadelphia. You might want to go see something, do something. And so having money set aside for souvenirs, for experiences, and the more you can pre-plan some of that, right? You can look at your destination and say, oh, while I'm there, for instance, whenever we go to New York, I want to take the family somewhere in the general vicinity and have an experience. Well, an easy one is like Niagara Falls. Okay, we're going to go up to Niagara Falls. So are we going to do the Maid of the Mist? Are we going to get some T-shirts, sweatshirts, trinkets, whatever that is, souvenirs? So whatever you can pre-plan, but just having money set aside to say, I know that I'm going to spend while I'm here. And this was a hard one for me. An example of that would be the family and I love to go to Six Flags Magic Mountain in California. Fairly easy to travel to because we can get there by car. We don't even have to rent a car. We can just take our own. So then it's really like lodging, the gas to get there. But one of the things I just struggled to put into the travel budget would be things for souvenirs. Well, one time I finally just was like, you know what? I'm going to set $300 aside so that Christina can just say, hey, I want to go into the gift shop. And it's like, here, you have $300. Manage that however you want. When I did it that time, finally, when we went into the gift shop, where I would normally just be like grinding my teeth and my fists would be clenched, I was actually like, cool. Because I had already processed the emotional side of it. And it's like, no. Like, she's got money, and Christina manages money well. So it's like, when we talked about the budget and we settled on $300, it was like, okay, like, I know she'll just go, and she didn't even spend it all. Right. But just the freedom, right? The freedom of like, I can come in here. I really just want one or two things, spend maybe $100 or something like that.
On one or two things. Yep. That sounds about right.
Yep.
in those souvenir shops.
Exactly. but the freedom on both sides, the freedom for me to be like, I don't have to worry about it because it's already been allocated, and the freedom on her end to not feel like, oh, well, I can only get one thing and I better make sure it's under $20. You're like, no. Like, just go do what you do.
I think it also gives your kids permission to get something, right? You can still say no, but you don't have to say no to everything that they're asking. And it gives an opportunity for them to have a lesson in there. because they'll know, I mean, and maybe that $300 wasn't also for the kids, but in our case, we might say, here's what we have, and this is what we can split among the children. And they love that. I mean, they love being able to go in. Admittedly, when we've traveled with my sister-in-law, she's always like, just get something, anything. And so they're used to that. And I'm not always the one who's willing to do that, because I'm the one who ends up stepping on the souvenir about 15 minutes after they buy it and having to throw it away because they've lost interest. And so it drives me crazy to waste money on that stuff. But I do understand that excitement. And so that lesson that I'm talking about is, yes, you can do something. Here are the parameters for that. And then they have to start, figuring out, I have to put this one back because I want this one instead. They have to start making choices about what is more important to them. And it's just a really good lesson for them.
Yeah. Excellent. I like that. I'm going to have to remember to just be more intentional about there's a learning opportunity here too, right?
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
You mentioned the whole gift shop thing and entertainment and all of that. And one thing I just want to throw in there too, Nino, is meds. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but there inevitably have been times when we're traveling and somebody needs Pepto-Bismol, or they need, Tylenol, and they didn't pack all the meds. Or when we were traveling with little ones, there's no way you can pack every single medication in case the kid is going to get sick. And so I can't tell you how many times we've had to walk into a CVS and make sure that we buy something for the kids or for the adults. And so I wouldn't put that in under entertainment necessarily, but it's just something to think about. And it's not necessarily part of your quote unquote travel fund. If you've got, medical fund somewhere else that's accessible by your debit card, but it is just something to think about when you're trying to figure out what are your travel expenses. I would also say that this is just maybe it's a little bit overly cautious, but whatever number you come up with, I would always suggest to my clients to increase that by 10%, because it is I think so difficult to really know, when you're in a different place, what really are the expenses? Or, you think, well, I'm going to travel and I'm going to do this thing for entertainment, or I'm going to have this set aside for food. But I don't know about you, but we are notorious for underestimating. And in order to get to your point about being able to just enjoy where you are and not feel so constricted by the numbers that we have. If we just increase that by 10%, worst case scenario, we use the extra 10%. Best case scenario, we fall somewhere between the ideal and that extra 10%, and we come home with a little bit extra that we can, again, distribute any way we want. So I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you have me thinking about revamping our travel planner for a sixth category just called contingency. Where you just build out 10% for everything that you just kind of talked about. As you shared about just being able to pick up allergy medicine or whatnot, the last couple of times I've gone to New York, the sun's not as direct there, but I still have fair skin. So I get red very easily, and I have to go and grab some aloe vera to rub it on my arms to soothe the redness. And it's things that I'm not planning for ahead of time, but I love that the dynamic of this conversation is going to lead to a sixth category called contingency, and it's just 10%, and it can be the catch-all for all those little things that you didn't necessarily plan for, so that you're not blowing your budget.
Awesome. Well, you unintentionally led directly to the question that I had in my head. And it's because you described it as a sixth category. So as you've been talking, you've mentioned very distinct categories. And my question to you is, do you typically keep things within that category? And if so, how do you do that with your clients? Are you having something that's just on a spreadsheet? Are you using some sort of envelope system? Or is this just part of your planning in order to decide what is the ultimate number, $7,000, for example, and then this person just has $7,000 and they just do what they're going to? Or is there a way that they try to stay within those different categories?
So, shameless plug. The Payday Power Planner Plus has this beautiful travel planner built into it. And the way that the travel planner is designed is it starts with what are your travel dates? And then it goes through those 5 categories, which is soon to be 6, where it's travel from A to B, then it's lodging, then it's getting around B, then it's food, then it's entertainment. And entertainment was kind of that catch-all. Entertainment is where if I didn't have money for the aloe vera, it was coming out of my entertainment fund. Yeah. But I really like this idea of adding. So you use the 5 categories to pre-plan because, again, you're looking also at dates. So when you're looking at food, it's like I'm putting a number in for each time. When I sat down with our client recently, those numbers were not the same for every day. She actually started off like, hey, the first couple of days, I want to treat some friends. So let's put this number there. And then that number got reduced down to a different number on different days. But since we were looking at all 8 days and then we were going day by day by day, it just helped her to build out her food budget for the trip. So we actually build out a budget for all 5 categories, and then that gives us the total. And then the total becomes divisible by how many pay periods there are between now and the trip. We have a rule where she's going to travel using the credit card for security purposes and for convenience. But we don't put anything on the credit card we don't already have the money for. So there's already travel funds associated to this. As she makes those purchases, she's also going to replenish that travel fund by dividing these expenses by the number of pay periods between now and when she travels. And so, for instance, a $1,000 expense, a $1,000 trip with 4 pay periods coming up, she's going to take $250 per pay period and put that back into her travel fund to keep it where she wants it. So that's how that works, both theoretically and practically.
I love that. And then when she's traveling, I think that's really what I'm curious about. When she's traveling, on those days, for example, that she's spending a certain amount for her friends, right? Is she tracking that somehow, or is she going in with a certain amount, like in an envelope, or that? I think that's really what I'm looking for.
Okay, so easy answer there is it depends. Different strokes for different folks. This particular client likes to track things like that, and we use a bank that has basically electronic envelopes, and so she can track it that way.
Okay.
Myself personally, I have the overall number. All that money is set aside to pay the credit card when I get back, but I'm just using the credit card on the different things that I already know I was going to spend on. And as long as I don't go over the ultimate budget, then I'm not really worried about tracking. I'm not somebody who likes to spend a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror. I will if I need to maybe do a little bit of an audit. Like if I overspent, now I'm going to look back and say, whoa, hold on, where did I go wrong, so that I can correct for next time. But that hasn't happened in quite some time. So instead of spending any time in the rearview mirror tracking what I did spend in that category, what I had left to spend in that category, it's more, here's my overall budget. Maybe the overall budget was $5,000. I come back. I have to make a $3,500 payment to the credit card. I call it a win.
Yep. Okay, perfect. So in that case, I think that would be an argument for that 10% increase, the incidental one, because if you are not tracking, you might not really stick within it because you just maybe don't know how much gas is over there, for example. That's, stuff like that. So you can always try to plan the best ahead, but there are just so many unknowns oftentimes. So I love that. I think it's super great. My last question, and still in regards to that, is if somebody is not like you and they're more like the tracking person, she uses a specific bank account that has, little categorical, I guess, like envelopes, right? Like
digital envelope type thing.
Yeah. Okay. But for the person who doesn't have something like that and maybe wants to use a card, whether it's a credit card or a debit card, is there a way to, would they just write down, have a piece of paper saying, I'm tracking that I spent this on this particular category. And it's not even for people who like to look in the rearview mirror, the way that you put it,
Yeah.
but more for people who maybe don't trust themselves
Yeah.
to stay within a spot, and they're really wanting to. Or maybe this person or this couple is, maybe it's super important that they stay on budget, and they know that, and they just cannot deviate from it because it will be devastating to their family finances, let's just say. And so in their case, they're like, no, this is really important to us. We did our due diligence, we planned, we know what to expect, and now we want to stick to that plan as best we can. What do you suggest for somebody like that?
Yeah, your question has me thinking about kind of the idea that I've been there, done that. I'm a veteran in this particular space, but when I'm speaking with a client who might be doing this for the first time or even the second time, third time, and they're really still new at this process, I got to remember that, they're a rookie and they're going to do things a little bit differently. It actually reminds me of another couple client of ours that they traveled to New York recently, and part of their budget was food, obviously, and another part was like Broadway shows. And they were tracking, because it was new to them, they were tracking as they went. So it's here's how much we set aside for food. We spent some of that on food today, and they were doing that just basically electronically, but they just, here's the $500 we have for food. We went out today, it was $70. We have $430 left.
Okay.
As they tracked along, they realized that they did not allocate enough money for the Broadway shows, but they allocated too much money for food. So it ended up being a wash. And when they came back, and this was the first time they really tracked, when they came back, they overspent their entire budget by $70. And the $70 compared to the $2,500 or $3,000, like the percentage was really low. So had we had a little 10% contingency fund, we would have been perfectly fine. But yeah, so depending on, personality type and all of that stuff, yeah, there's different ways that you can track it. A fun way that I have mentioned to clients in the past, but I don't know that anybody's actually done it. We have some Melissa and Doug money at home. It's the play money that actually looks pretty legit. Mm-hmm. Use your credit card, but then stuff real envelopes with that play money, and then just kind of manage that. Like when you spent $40, just take $40 out and put it in a different envelope that just says spent or whatever. If you need or want more of that tangible, like almost as if it is really cash, but you're using the card instead.
Yeah. I have a lot of that money. It's not Melissa and Doug here. It's definitely made in China, but it's it's prop money is what it says on there. And I bought it because I teach personal finance to young kids, and so we like to have something tangible. So I have a ton of that. But as you're talking, I'm like, you know what? That would actually be kind of a cool thing to do with your kids on a trip, because it's like, hey, we're managing all this on the other side, right? So we know that's happening, but instead of us doing the transferring from envelope to envelope, it would be great to have the kids do that, because it's just a really solid lesson for them to be able to, oh, we spent this much on money today. And it also helps them realize, oh, this isn't cheap, right. And gives them a sense of gratitude for the sacrifices that their parents are actually making in order to make these trips something that are a reality for them. So just another way to not only steward your money well, but to steward your vocation as a parent well as well at the same time.
I love that you just continue to challenge me with intentionality. Right? There's a level of intentionality that I can go to that I have not yet quite achieved. So I'm very grateful.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, earlier on, too, we also said that oftentimes we're doing travel planning when we know where we're going, but sometimes you want to maybe get started with some travel planning even if you don't have something specifically planned. And I think for anybody who doesn't have a destination in mind right now and some dates set aside, you too could start a travel fund. I'm actually reminded that one of our clients is the daughter of other clients, and we started a travel fund with the daughter, and all of a sudden the parents were like, wait a minute, we want one of those. Right. And so they didn't have a destination picked out. And the daughter didn't necessarily, she was just like, look, I know that I want to travel. I don't know when, I don't know where, but I know I want to. So what did that look like for her? And for her, it was, let's come up with a number first that you're targeting. How much do you want saved? I believe the original number was $4,000. And then it was like, okay, well, how much can we contribute to that fund over time, and how long will it take? And in her particular case, she was in a spot where she could contribute like $400 or more a month. So by the end of it, it took her maybe 5 to 7 months to get that funded. But it was, hey, this is my targeted goal. Here's what I can contribute to it a little bit each time so that I can get up to that number. And so you don't even have to have travel plans to start a travel fund.
Yeah, it's a good habit, I think, to get into. And I love how she had no destination, but she knew she wanted to travel, because that just speaks very poignantly to the idea of putting your money where your values are. And she knew that that was a value of hers. She didn't know where she was going to go, but wanted to save anyway.
Yeah. And now, and that was like 2+ years ago. Now she has traveled internationally. She's traveled throughout the States, and she's done so using the method I mentioned earlier, which is she has the travel fund. She puts things on the credit card, and we map everything out so that between the time she starts to plan and the time she actually goes, she can kind of divide how much do I need to put back into the travel fund to keep it at the level I want it. So I think that brings us to the challenge of the week for our listeners. The challenge is to have, if travel is part of your values, add it as a line item to your budget, your cash flow plan, and start putting away for it. Start putting away for travel, whatever you can, a little bit at a time, and you'll look up, and before you know it, you'll have hundreds and then thousands of dollars just sitting in a travel account waiting for you to pick a destination and a time to go there.
Sounds lovely.
And we have a tool that can help you to do that. So check out the show notes to download the Payday Power Planner Plus, which has a travel planner built right into it that will be updated very shortly with a 6th category for contingencies.
That sounds awesome. I myself have not yet downloaded the Payday Power Planner Plus. I've definitely done the other one. So now that I know that this is in there and we are in the throes of all of our travel plans, I'm absolutely going to use the tools that we actually have created. So I'm actually excited about that, Nino. On my end, challenge accepted.
Awesome.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Christ Centered Stewardship Podcast. Follow us on your favorite social media platform for more encouragement and support. And until next time, may the Lord keep you in perfect peace as you set your sight on Jesus.